everybody. My name is Quinn Dixon, so I work for Engaging Networks. Like you, I've worked in non-profits before, so I've been working email for over a decade and spent some of that time working for a non-profit, working their email campaigns. And then I settled here at Engaging Networks about 7 years ago, specializing in email, but doing some other work too.
Does this work? Hey there. Hey, my name is Joe Hallisey. I'm from Zurich Group, and before I was at Zurich Group, which is an Engaging Networks partner, I was actually a client and bothered this guy all the time about email, and now it's part of one of the things that I do, besides from Google Analytics and general Engaging Networks questions and pretty much anything marketing technology.
So in that this is about getting emails into inboxes, it's about email deliverability, which is about demonstrably getting emails into inbox, measuring placement and so on. It can be affected by various different factors, anything from like the sender address to the content you put in the email or the file attachments that you put in the footer of the email, things like that. And I found that fixing up your email deliverability is the most effective way of making your email campaigns more effective. In my experience, it's been more effective than the content you're putting in there, and so on. Why is it key? Why is it really relevant now? Well, this year marks a huge year for email security. There's huge changes afoot, more so than I can ever remember. Possibly ever. And then the big reason for that is like two of the biggest movers shakers in the email industry, which is Google and Yahoo, are shaking everything up with new requirements for this year. Other big players such as Microsoft also are up in the ante with their security requirements, being less transparent about it, but that's why these things are as important now as they ever have been. For me, there's 3 key factors in good email deliverability. I should probably be a little bit more specific on this. This is from the technical standpoint. Joe might go into a little bit more detail here with the content. But email authentication, email placement, and list health, I found to be like the 3 strongest markers of good deliverability. Email authentication, classically, used to be on 2 standards: Sender Policy Framework, which is SPF, and DKIM, which is Domain Keys Integrated Mail. I won't go into too many details with them, but if you start those lined up, you were authenticating mail for the vast majority of mailbox providers. That's no longer the case. There's as a standard that's been around for quite a while, but has always been like a preferred standard and is now becoming a requirement this year with the Google and Yahoo sender requirements that are coming out. That's DMARC. Show of hands, how many people here have heard of DMARC? Okay, cool. So that's pretty good. How many people of you lot understand anything about how DMARC works? Nobody. All right, that's why I have a job. So yeah, there's another. What they're effectively about, those standards, is aligning your own domain, the sender domain, with all of the other technical authentications that happen up and down an email, from the header and so on. And authentication is going even further in the current climate. So what a lot of email service providers used to do is use their own domain to set tracked links in an email. So you'd see with our tools, for example, your tracked link would use engagingnetworks.app more commonly now, previously e-activist.com, which are domains that were owned by us, and we send the tracked link through to them, then redirect it onto your page so that we can give you the click-through data and so on. And it was a straightforward way of doing that. Now, to have like the gold standard, you need to be setting that track linked to your own custom domains as well. And we worked really hard this year to make that a standard with both marketing tools and the legacy email builder as well. So email authentication is getting trickier all the time and advancing all the time. There's even a relatively new standard on the block called BIMI. And don't ask me what that stands for. I'm sure Joe can tell you more. He's going to go in a bit more detail with that later as well. But that's quite an interesting marketing standard that's come out. It might be interesting for you guys to have a look at. So email placement as well. So what this means is where your emails, if they're being accepted by the mail server, where they're landing, be it in like the spam folder or inbox. And then when you've got things like Google and Microsoft, you've got the promotional folder or the primary folder. And it's been able to measure that really. And like, again, a show of hands, how many people here use a seed list? Cool. So about similar amount as who know, different people, but a similar amount as who know about DMARC. So if you do one thing today, go away and do one thing with your email program, create a seed list. There, you could do them very simply. Just, create a mailbox with Gmail, one with Microsoft, like Hotmail or Outlook.com, and one with Yahoo, and then just add it to your subscriber list. We actually have a tool in Engaging Networks that you can use to add it with like some neat little tool set. But you needn't do that. You can just opt them into communications. And then just monitor when your emails go out, where those emails are landing. Is it the primary folder? Is it the secondary folder? Is it the spam folder? And it'll give you, as long as they're going out with your full broadcast, it'll give you a really good idea for where your emails are landing for your supporters. Obviously, the more like mailboxes you're able to use and the more mailboxes you're able to set up with different providers, the better idea you'll get. There are also third-party services, things like Email on Acid, Litmus, 250OK, which offer this service with like a wide range of different mailboxes and dashboards and so on, so you can pay premiums for that kind of service. So in terms of email placement, this is like a thing I've always thought is a really neat trick. So like I've found that, and like a lot of you are probably aware, getting really good placement can be achieved with neat little tricks like doing asks to add for your supporters to add your sender address to their contact lists, or to move your mailbox to their primary inbox. Both things you can do in most of the webmail clients quite easily. Just like actions like that, like even if a few hundred of your supporters are doing it regularly, like really bumps up your placement with the major mailbox providers. A really good time to do that is on welcome series, when you've got your engagement at the highest possible level with your supporters. When they reach getting their first email, and that's that first point of contact with you, just put in a PS with an add to contacts ask, and it can really just, it's simple, it costs nothing, it's very effective.
Can I add something onto that?
Yeah, of course.
So one of the ways that you can actually even improve that ask to add to contacts is use the conditional content feature in Engaging Networks and sort by the different email domains and direct them to a link that specifically shows them how to do it in Yahoo or in Gmail or in AOL or other things. So it's not just a generic, have people figure out how to add that. You could give them instructions on how to do it really easily for their specific domain. I've found that personalizing that increases that conversion rate for actually getting that done.
Snake, did you see this? This is the guy right here. So another little thing I've noticed, particularly with Gmail, is the sender address that's used. So what I've found from experience is using first name, last name, and a mailbox that is also first name, last name. So personal mailbox and personal salutation and so on. Very effective for certain major mailbox providers. Using things like hello at or news at, like, can often just that can end you up in the spam folder. So you could be doing everything wrong, but you end up in the spam folder just through that filtering. So things to keep in mind. There's, like I said, I think Joe's going to go into a few more details later on, but email placement is a really important thing to be measuring. Don't just send that campaign out, see where it's landing. And then list health, I think, is the next cornerstone. So cleaning and validating new list acquisitions, something I used to do in my previous job. We were acquiring a lot of stuff from social media. There was a big push for that. So one thing I put in place was like anything that came from that went through like a list validation test with a third-party provider. We've vetted one at Engaging Networks called Zero Bounce. We've done like a data protection impact assessment, make sure it complies with all of our standards. So if you want to hear more about them, you can reach out to us. They're well worth checking out. Just like anything new that's coming in, running it through that check first, is well worth doing, or anything that's questionable is well worth doing as well. This is an oldie but a goodie. I think most people are probably doing this, removing inactives from your list. You can set whatever threshold you want that to be for yourselves, whether it's 6 months or 8 months, but if they haven't opened or clicked anything in a certain period of time, you want to be getting them off your list. Because those, they can, those supporters can turn into spam traps, and they'll affect your reputation effectively in the long run. So, and that's the final point. Both of those factors will really, if you're doing them consistently, you'll be avoiding a majority of spam traps coming into your list as a result. So, well worth getting sorted. Joe.
All right, cool. Can I switch places with you?
Sure.
All right. So I'm going to build on what Gwyn was saying and focus more on some actionable items that you can do hopefully today with some of this stuff. So the first thing that I want to talk about is list cleaning. And this is my quote that I tell everyone: be happy with every opt-out you get. The reason why is if someone doesn't want to be on your list, that's okay. Let them leave because they're not interested in you. You don't want to have them just sitting in your inbox or their inbox and they're never clicking on it. They're never doing anything. It's a bad signal to the ISPs and to the spam filters if they're not doing that. So this is a hard pill to swallow for a lot of the executives. And they're like, why are people unsubscribing? And you say, be happy for it. We're cleaning our list. They're cleaning it for you for free. Let's talk about list health a little bit more in detail here. So a few different ways that you could really focus on cleaning your list depends on the types of donors that you have on file. So if you have a ton of corporate donors, like say you do a lot of peer-to-peer where you have corporate teams, or you have large events where you have lots of corporate sponsors, you might have a lot of business emails on your list. Take a look at them and see if they've been opening it, because people change jobs and a lot of these companies aren't doing the best job of actually closing down email addresses or redirecting them. So you might have a lot of stale business addresses that are just not interested in you. Take a look at if you can, some of these services will give you data on out of office replies to say like, hey, this person doesn't work here anymore. And that can help you clean that up as well. The other thing is education. So especially with higher ed subscribers, there's lots of things that you might not think about is, if you do a lot of campus events, are the people that are signing up today going to graduate this year, and that email address is going to become inactive? So what we suggest to clients a lot of times is if you're doing an on-campus event sign up, see if you can capture their class year. So you could then do a filter on an annual basis, say everyone that had 2023 as a year, let's double check to see if that email is active. If not, let's unsubscribe them. This is something that's pretty true in the US, and I don't know if it applies to Canada, but some schools have different email formats for faculty and staff versus students. So depending on if you have a large number of higher ed folks on your list, you might need to just take a little bit of extra time to understand what those email formats are, so you're not unsubscribing faculty when you're hoping to unsubscribe students. And then finally, disposable. This comes up a lot with like Giving Tuesday and folks that are doing a Giving Day. I've seen a lot of folks using disposable email addresses, and you're never going to hear from these guys again. So one of the tools that you can use with Zero Bounce or a few other list validation tools is you can add them to your donation forms and then set it to say, we don't accept disposable email addresses. So you can do a real nice thing by saying, hey, we'd love to stay in contact with you. Can you use a personal email address instead of a disposable one? So the slides are going to be up, I think, on the app, and there's a whole list with that many more if you're interested in all the different disposable email address domains. Another thing is legacy email domains. So anybody have an AOL address still? A couple people. Also look for really old ISPs. I think Shaw is one, Bell. A lot of those folks that have those might not be using those anymore. Double check to see if they're still interested in what you're providing, or if they have actually opened an email or clicked on an email in the last year. You might have a whole bunch of easy email addresses you can clean up there. The other thing is Yahoo. They did a huge take back of emails in 2019, and they're continuing to do this. Basically, what they're doing is they're looking back a year and saying, if you don't open or access your Yahoo account, they're going to claw that back and allow other people to sign up with that email domain. But we know that they've taken a bunch of those email addresses and turned them into spam traps. They're not telling us how many of those addresses are still active. But if you have any Yahoo addresses that are on your file before 2018 and they haven't engaged since 2019, you might want to just consider them to be a spam trap. Just as a cleanup policy. Subject lines. Okay, so our recommendations here: keep it short, no more than 9 words. Avoid using the same subject line. And sender messages will get threaded in Gmail. So I don't know if you've noticed this. Like if you're using the same same subject line year over year because you think it works, it's going to get lost in folks' inboxes because it'll just get threaded if it's on Gmail. So add a space at the end, just if that's all you have to do to get it to bump to the top. And then emoticons, like the smiley face that isn't an emoji, those are spam flags quite often. And then also using a lot of emojis can be a spam flag too. And then there's a ton of spammy words out there, $signs, the word free. I know that it works for a lot of folks, but using RE at the start of a campaign for a reply, but it's not a real reply, is very noticeable to ISPs. So be careful with it. And the words take action actually have been known to be a spam flag. Sender names and emails. Okay, so this is an actual company that is using email addresses as the sender name, and they're using it to spell out really weird things. It's kind of amazing that they're doing this, but the ISPs don't like that. There's a few nonprofits out there that do this too. I would not recommend it. Just like Gwen was saying, use a real person's first name, last name, and perhaps their organization name. So my example here, Joe Hallisty, Zuri Group. So you get a real person and you get the organization in there as well, just so people know who you are. I also suggest don't use too many different sender email addresses. People are going to get confused by who's talking to them. Try to keep it from a select few. Maybe you have the guy that's the program side folks. Maybe it's the fundraisers, and maybe it's your general email address that you send out from a communications person. The one thing I'd say about that is don't always send your asks, your appeals from the same email, because people are going to get desensitized to that. I have a client that would always send it from their CEO, and so everybody knew that when the CEO is emailing them, it's going to be an ask for money. Don't let them be the bad guy all the time. Let them share good news. Send it from someone else on the team every once in a while.
Can I add something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just in terms of that, one client I saw recently, they seemed to do everything right again, and they were saying the mailbox format was first name dot last name at yourorg.org, but they had assigned the name of the sender as news desk or something, and just even doing that was impacting their placement as far as I could see. It was the only thing I could see that was the difference between what was landing in spam and what wasn't. Even with just you assign engaging networks and most email service providers a name as well as the mailbox, and it's often better just to use first name last name for everything.
Message content. A lot of the spammy things that I was talking about before apply here as well. There's a few kind of notes that I always tell folks. Keep your HTML to 80 kilobytes or less to avoid the Gmail message clipped. I don't know if you've ever seen that at the bottom of a message. It says message clipped, like click here to see the full one. Everybody hates that, right? Replace click here with a call to action. Please do this. It'll really help actually get those clicks. And if you do have a lot of corporate addresses on your file, focus on optimizing your email templates for Outlook. There's lots of really weird gotchas that Microsoft has in terms of how they style your emails. So take some time to focus on that. This QR code goes to a really interesting set of code snippets that really will help get your emails to be able to get looking good in lots of different clients here. All right, BME. So BME is brand indicators for marketing identification. This is a hot new thing that's on the market right now for helping folks understand and verify the senders that are getting that are hitting their box. So if you have a trademark logo, this is the biggest requirement here. If you have a trademark logo, what you do is you get one of these things called a verified mark certificate, and then you put this code into your DNS record, and what it'll do is put your logo next to your emails in lots of different email clients. So you see the supported clients down there: Apple, Google, Yahoo. Who's missing from this, though? Microsoft.
I was about to answer that myself.
Microsoft. So Microsoft is not committed to this, but there's more and more different ISPs coming onto this list of coming soon. I only added like kind of the big ones here, but this is a big win for brand recognition, especially if you have a well-known logo, to be able to stand out. And that's it. So,
should we do questions?
All right, thank you so much, folks. We have a bunch of questions that have come in. So one of the questions is, what are the best steps to track down a spam trap if one gets into the database other than Yahoo?
Which one is it up here or? Here. Yeah, Joe, do you want to help? Should I give it a crack?
yeah. So finding spam traps is really hard. I definitely say that. A lot of the third-party tools out there are the best ways of identifying it, what your spam traps might be, but none of them tell you exactly which email address is a spam trap. They'll give you hints. One of the easiest things that you can do is identify what are called typo traps, and that's pretty much what it is it's a misspelled email address. So if you look at your sender file, your email list, you might have one that's Yahoo with 2 Ys. So a lot of big ISPs own these variations of their domains, and they look for it as a way to add spam traps as well. Also, if you're looking at email addresses where you have a name in it, say John Smith with an extra H, a lot of times that could be a questionable email. So if you're seeing that they're never engaging with you, but they've stuck on your list, that could be something. The other thing that you can do is you can take all of your email list and you can put it through a tool like NeverBounce or ZeroBounce, and they have a list of what they consider spam traps, and they'll tell you like, hey, these are questionable emails, these are unknowns, and you can use that to sort out ones as well. Obviously, take a look at ones that like might be your board members, your VIPs, and be mistaken for it, but it's a good tool.
Yeah, I think the best way is to just not get it on your list at all. It's they're horrible to get out. So I've had like clients who have ended up on a block list as a result of having spam traps, and like quite significant block lists, and then weeding out that trap is really difficult. Usually, we have notification systems that tell us when a certain block list is triggered, and we have like procedures for notifying the client if it's a serious issue. And when that happens, it's usually a case of when was the first listing, what list would have been added around that time, and then you're just trying to like narrow it down to as small a group as you can, and then you just exclude them from sending. So you take the list you think it's in, and you send a full file apart from that list. If you don't trigger the block list, then it's in that group, and then you can put that group in half again, and in half again, and in half again. And like usually what happens is you have to cull a certain amount, but you're trying to limit the damage at that point. The actions you're going to take depend on the severity of the block list. If it's one like Spamhaus, it's going to be a life-changing event. But yeah, that's my experience there.
Perfect, thank you. We have another question. We've seen testing that using a vanity email address as a sender name can raise response. Is your guidance to avoid this as a hard and fast rule?
I'm a very conservative emailer, and so I personally would say that you should avoid it. If it works for you, go ahead, but do so at your own risk.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Any thoughts or consideration for Apple's Hide My Email feature?
Oh, the Apple privacy protection is that, I think. Yeah. I guess it's changed the landscape. So, we did some research and we saw like average open rates going up by 30 or 40%. Not only does it affect Apple's mailboxes and the domains it controls, but it affects anybody who's using an Apple device as well. So potentially, it was a bit of a watershed. It kind of messed up a lot of people's marketing metrics. There's more of that coming as well. So we've seen that Microsoft is doing a lot of as part of its like security scanning is like clicking on tracked links in emails to check the verification of the content, that obviously has implications for the validity of click-through rates as well. So it's becoming increasingly hard to rely on engagement rates as a result of the security measures that a lot of the big providers are taking. And that is one of the challenges that the sector is facing, I think.
I've pretty much thrown out open rate as something that I track with my clients, and I just say focus on the click-through rate or the overall engagement rate of did they click and then they did a second action. There are tools out there or people that have come up with kind of formulas to say this is the adjusted click rate or this is the adjusted open rate. You could Google that, and if you feel like that is a valid measurement for your team, you could use that as a potential new metric for you. But there's no hard and fast or specific thing that's agreed upon with the whole industry.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's solved it yet. I think that's the problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. What are your thoughts about double opt-ins?
I mean, sorry, Joe, do you want to go ahead?
Technically, they're amazing. I totally get it that they are difficult for actually getting people to opt in. But if you want a very clean list, that's the way to go. I'm not an attorney and I don't give law advice, but I think that there are some regulations that expressly suggest that you should do double opt-ins. So consider that if you're in one of those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I can say from experience that we have clients in Germany who are legally required to do this, and I think they are the only clients I've ever encountered using a double opt-in, from our client list. Because I just don't think non-profits want to sacrifice that level of engagement or that conversion, and that's fine. That's the environment we have to work in because those are your needs. Most of the block lists and like the domain block lists and the IP block lists go on and on about how everything needs to be using double opt-ins, and if we'd been using double opt-ins, none of this would ever happen. So that's the stuff I have to deal with. But it's not your problem. I get that you're driving towards conversion. Double opt-in is the gold standard, though. So.
Perfect. Okay, I'll be combining two questions here. What is the ideal size of a seed list? And another question is, our seed list addresses are all staff emails. Should we be using different domains in our seed list?
In terms of using different domains, yes. The seed list should be all the large email providers, Gmail, Yahoo, AOL, Microsoft, or Outlook.com. And then if you can, some of the other largest domains that you're sending to. So, if you can get a hold of a Rogers email address, you can get a hold of a Shaw email address to use as a seed list, that would be great. And then I think the second part was using all staff emails.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't consider the staff emails to be like an actual seed list. I just would call that the list that you always send to. But if you've got staff on the list that are never clicking on it, then that's going to bring down your engagement rate. Also, it might make Microsoft or Gmail think a little bit less about your email too.
These like catch-all mailboxes are we talking about?
I think that they meant like putting their entire staff.
No, I think they meant that they're all on the same domains. It's just the staff.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I agree with what Joe's saying about the seed list. There's only a certain amount you'll be able to go out and easily set up for free. You're limited, like ISPs don't give them out unless you buy internet off them. So, that's a fairly large part of the market. But that said, 70% of most lists is like Microsoft, Google, and Yahoo. The more, you could set up just one for any of those and you're getting a fairly good view already. If you set up more, then you can vary the engagement and that'll give you more insight. So if you open and click one seed and then don't open and click the other seed, that's giving you some information. And obviously the more data you have on that, the better the better the insight you're going to get. But just starting with one each is a great place to start.
And I think there was another question there about how big should a seed list be. Like, you could only have it as like the 3 or 4 big ones, but if you're using one of these paid for tools like 250OK, they'll give you 250 seed list email addresses for you to test against.
All right. Next, we have a question which I think is a pain point for everyone. Can you talk a little more about optimizing templates for Outlook?
Yeah, so there's all sorts of little tips and tricks that you have to go through for optimizing for Outlook. If you just search for like how to optimize like emails for Outlook, you'll get a ton of great information out there. One of the most annoying things that I come across quite often that I'm fixing for clients is they add a little white divider line about halfway down the email, and there's a fix for that to make it so it doesn't look like your thing's cut off in the middle. But the QR code's going to be in the deck too. But if you want to come up to me, I'll give it to you as well.
Yeah, I mean, I used to design. I haven't for many years, but used to design templates and things, and there used to be much bigger market for it. More and more now, people are using stuff that's out of the box because it just does that, and you don't have to fiddle around with it so much. But yeah, I take Joe's point as well.
All right, we're almost at time, so I'll just take one more question. Should we run a whitelisting campaign in our welcome series? Should we target whitelisting to specific specials? Specific ESPS? Not sure.
Yeah, email service providers, yeah. Joe, do you want to go? Oh.
Yeah, I think this is iffy on the whitelisting. So Google came out with this thing, I think, a couple years ago where they don't like automatic warm-ups. So if you do kind of a warm-up or a whitelisting, allowable listing campaign, you have to do it manually. I think the way that I tend to do this, I didn't do it with Welcome Series, but if I'm starting up an email program from scratch or starting with a new sender address, what I'll do is I'll send to the most engaged people on my list first, then I'll wait a couple hours, and then I'll send to the somewhat engaged people next, and then I'll wait a couple hours, and then I'll send to the least engaged or the never clickers. So what you're doing is you're sending a signal to the ISPs that with the first list, if those folks are the ones that are always clicking or opening your emails, if they're going to open it, they're giving the trust signal to the ISPs to say, hey, my nonprofit is legitimate, my interests are legitimate, so treat this sender with a little bit more trust than the average one. And then by the time it rolls down to the people that never open, it'll still land in their inbox, hopefully.
Yeah, agree.
All right, great. Well, thank you, folks. That's all the time we had.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.